Hey everyone, this is episode 7 of Keeping Democracy Alive. My name is Rem Hellman. I'm a rising junior at Tufts University, um, majoring in international relations, um, and I am involved in Hillel's coordinating, specifically through their Holocaust and Genocide programming sponsored by Lee Cummings. And because of that, I have been blessed to be on their Wednesday or a part of their Wednesday meetings regarding social justice and initiatives through Hillel. And this is the offshoot of that, specifically after we have been living in this weird times of COVID. So this is Keeping Democracy Alive, episode 7. I'm here with Madeline Mardiks, excuse me, from Not My Generation. So I'm going to hand it over to her. She can introduce herself, and she can introduce Not My Generation.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Madeline Mardiks. I am a rising senior at American University in Washington, D.C. I'm majoring in justice law and criminology with a minor in Spanish. And I am originally from Brooklyn, New York, and social justice and organizing has always been a big part of who I am and what I do. So that's kind of how I got involved with Not My Generation. So Not My Generation is a nonprofit organization that is run by young adults and students for young adults and students. It is a gun violence prevention organization that is committed to working on localized intersectional approaches to gun violence prevention work and prevention of systemic violence of all kinds. Not My Generation, we've been around for about a year and a half. So we're a fairly new nonprofit, and it is run exclusively by young adults.
Awesome. I have a plethora of questions that I am excited to ask you. So I think first and foremost, Not My Generation. So let's talk about, or I'm just curious to hear about why you guys decided for that to be the name of your organization.
Yeah, well, so as everyone knows, gun violence has been an epidemic in this country for a long time. And we felt that, Not My Generation kind of represented how we feel about gun violence and how gun violence has been plaguing our generation more than it has others. In the past years, the number of shootings, the instances of gun violence in this country have been increasing. And we're saying it's not our generation, this is not who we are, and we're going to fight to protect our generation from this epidemic of violence.
I like that. And then the other thing, just about the foundation of Not My Generation. So it was founded a year ago. Was it like a group of you guys who had known each other? Can you talk about the founding of it? Was it like one person who kind of was like, let's do this, and then recruited other people?
Yeah, sure. So it was founded by one person. Her name is Catherine Fleischer. She is a student at University of Pittsburgh. And I have known Catherine for many years. We did NIFTY together in high school, so that's how we knew each other. And she was very moved and upset and angry after the Tree of Life shooting. As a Jewish young adult living in Pittsburgh at the time of the shooting, it really impacted her. And that was kind of her breaking point, and was like, I need to do something. I feel like something has got to change, and there needs to be a new approach to what's going on. And that doesn't exist right now, so I'm going to create it. So originally, Not My Generation was just a conference. Her idea was that we were going to have a conference for young adult organizers across the country to come together and talk about gun violence prevention and talk about what they were doing in their localized communities, and to bring together different organizations that were already working on gun violence prevention efforts to work together to progress the movement even more. And that was the original idea. So when she had that idea, we happened to be staffing a Jewish social justice weekend with the Religious Action Center in DC together. And she was like, I have this idea. Would you want to like help me out? Like, I'm not really sure where I'm going yet, but I know that you have done a lot of organizing in the past, and specifically gun violence prevention organizing. Like, would you be interested in helping me, see what this is? And I said, absolutely, yes. So after that weekend, she emailed me like 2 days later, and we started talking. And after that, we kind of brought in other people from our respective communities. So there are a couple other nifty people who we both knew who are on the team as well as other organizers that Catherine has interacted with through different programs she's been a part of, or different people she's known. And now the leadership of Not My Generation, we have 9 people on the board of directors, and 7 regional coordinators, 18 national committee members, and 11 Not My Generation coalitions across the country. So from what was kind of just the 2 of us and a couple other nifty friends, we built this much bigger organization.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible when I looked at our team page and looked at the board of directors, every single person is from a different place. How does that work? How do you guys use Zoom? Like, were you guys using Zoom even before COVID started? How does it work for you guys to coordinate your events? What does action look like for you guys in terms of like deciding something to do when you're all on different campuses? How do you coordinate like actionable events?
Yeah, so our goal from the start was to build a national organization with representation from all around the country, because gun violence and violence in general manifests in very different ways depending on where you are. Different communities experience violence and gun violence in different ways. So we wanted to make sure that everyone's voices were represented when trying to combat that issue. There are, I guess there's 3 of us who all work or go to school in the DC area. So that did help a little bit with planning and things like that, but we mostly just Zoom. We have a weekly board of directors meeting. It's about 2 hours long, and we just like talk through everything. We have group chat, we text all the time. I'm one of the 2 communications directors, and I probably FaceTime the other communications director like every other day. So we just do, what we have to do to stay connected and make sure that we're like on the same page with what's going on. We also, almost every board of director leads a national committee, so they have weekly calls with their national committee. Our field director is responsible for overseeing our regional coordinators, so she talks to them about once a week, and then our regional coordinators oversee the leads of the local coalitions, so they talk to them. So there is like a very clear kind of chain of command, just to make sure that everybody is talking to each other and knows what's going on. We also hold open board of directors meetings for anyone in Not My Generation leadership once a month. So that's like another way that we all remain connected with each other. We use Slack as well to like send messages and documents and things like that. And in terms of events, really our big event that we did was the national summit. So we did have a national summit in November in DC. And
Okay.
that was kind of the big launch of the organization. And up until the summit, most of what we had been working on was the summit. And then after the summit, that's kind of when the rest of the organization fell into place. We haven't had a ton of smaller local events, especially because, not 4 months later, all of the coronavirus stuff happened. So we have done a lot of virtual events, and our organizers in local communities are working on, community initiatives, local legislation, things like that.
Yeah. I thought it was particularly exciting to have you on. Not that I'm any older than you, but I think it's pretty cool that I get to highlight an organization that's specifically run by um, college students, people who are either still in college or just out of college, people around my age, and having this big an impact. So I wanted to applaud you for that and the things that you're doing. That's pretty awesome. Um, I wanted to shift the conversation though. I think I don't even really have to go into detail when I say we're in a moment right now in terms of politically, emotionally, and fundamentally, like change is hopefully going to occur. Um, and when I was reading your mission statement, as in not my generation's mission statement, obviously it's all about gun violence, but what particularly caught my attention, and I'm assuming this was written before um, all the marches and protesting had started, was in the vision part. There's, first of all, you have a podcast, which is super cool. I need to give that a listen. And we can talk
Yeah,
more about that later. But it says produces a podcast in collaboration with
it's
our
coming soon.
partners about how different issues intersect with gun violence, i.e., policing alternatives, comprehensive mental health care, etc. I'm really interested to hear about why you guys chose to mention specifically policing alternatives and how that plays into um, gun violence as a whole, and specifically um, what your guys' ambition is in terms of creating reform.
Yeah, so, gun violence has always been our, you know, specific focus, but we also recognize that so many other social issues are a part of gun violence. So whether that is racial inequalities, inequalities within LGBTQ people, you know, um, wealth inequalities, like there's so many underlying issues that intersect with gun violence, which is why we do like to focus. We use the word intersectional in almost everything we do,
Mm-hmm.
because we do believe that, it's not just about the guns. There's so many other things that contribute. And, police violence is one of those things that really connects to gun violence. On a very surface level, police are armed. And a lot of the times when Black men or Black women are killed by police, they're shot. So that is a very basic kind of understanding of how the two issues connect.
Yeah.
But beyond that, in communities that experience police violence, gun violence is typically a big problem as well, and sometimes is what draws the police to those communities.
Mm.
So there's lots of connections, and we definitely had that as part of what we were doing always. Like it was kind of always one of the underlying issues that we did discuss.
Yeah.
Hasn't now, and it's scheduled to launch at the beginning of July. And in the podcast, the podcast is called Root Causes. And the idea behind that is that it is supposed to talk about the root causes behind gun violence. And racial inequality is one of the things that we will focus on in the podcast in connection to that. And then definitely since everything has happened, we have kind of shifted our focus a little bit. We put together a few different projects that we wanted to do. We also, something that we have had a lot of discussions about and thought about is that, the majority of our team are not Black organizers.
Yeah.
We have a couple, but it's not the majority. So making sure that we are uplifting the voices of other Black organizers, so other organizations that, have a deeper and more personal connection to what's going on, and making sure that we are uplifting that. In addition to doing some of our own stuff, last week we hosted a virtual phone bank where people could call the police departments, mayors, city officials in cities where people have recently been killed by police. So calling people in Minneapolis, in Louisville, some of the more high profile cases that have happened right now. We're also planning on sending an email later this week where our supporters can send messages to their legislators telling them to support bills for things like demilitarizing the police. So it's definitely always been a little part of what we do, but now it's certainly been coming to the forefront of what we do in reaction to what's going on right now.
Yeah. I read your Not My Generation statement on Instagram that you guys posted, which I'm assuming was also on your website. And it was, first of all, incredibly well written. So bravo to whoever wrote that. That was amazing. But secondly, kind of to your point about how you're not in a negative way or intentionally not representative of the Black community as an organization, but the fact that you guys are a majority white organization, you guys made an explicit statement saying that as white people, we need to learn about history, we need to educate ourselves, we need to be allies, and exactly like you said, we need to uplift the voices of the Black community and Black organizers. So just to understand, you guys are kind of using this gun violence platform to, you're shifting for the moment, right? You're focusing more so on demilitarization, trying to, because to build off your point and not trying to talk for you, I'm just trying to understand fully. You guys view exactly what is being protested about as being fundamentally related to gun violence. This whole idea of having a community of people in America being constantly afraid for their lives and being constantly violently treated by those people who are supposed to treat them peacefully and keep them safe has resulted in an escalation of not only violence, but specifically gun violence between both sides, right? So that's why you guys are so focused on this, right?
For sure. And we also just, as a nonprofit, as a social justice oriented nonprofit, who especially, because of the pandemic and all that, is mostly digital and focused on online engagement. Reacting to what the media is putting out and what's going on in this moment is something that, has always been something that's important to us. So whether, that is a mass shooting that just happened, or these, everything that's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, we want to make sure that we are reacting and speaking out no matter what the social justice issue is that's going on right now. But we certainly do feel that we especially, should be speaking out and directing our attention to what's going on right now, due to the connection to gun violence, and also just due to how important this feels and what, a big moment in history this feels like. And that we feel like this is exactly in our realm. And it's our responsibility to be speaking out on behalf of our organization, but as was mentioned before, also uplifting voices of those who are most directly affected by it.
Mm. What I don't I would love to have, if it were up to me, and I might even actually release like another little like segment separately of me just talking about what's going on later. If it were up to me, I could talk about this with you for like the whole time, but I want to highlight more about not my generation. Um, so I'm not trying to downplay this moment and what you guys are doing, but I want to hear more about not my generation. What does action look like for you guys, right? So like you mentioned being very present in the online world, but also it's clear that you guys are very active on college campuses. So if I'm a student at American University, for example, right, where you go, am I seeing like pamphlets on the dining hall, like Not My Generation is hosting a summit? Like, what am I as a student? How am I hearing about it? How does it pertain to me? If it does pertain to me, yeah, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So personally for me, because I am one of the communications directors, the digital aspect of Not My Generation is it's kind of what I do.
For sure.
And I also, digital organizing, that has kind of been my focus for a couple of years now. It's where many of my internships have kind of the fields they've been in, and
Yeah.
where I want to head professionally as well.
So feel free to talk about that side if that's what, yeah, feels more.
Yeah. So it is a lot of what we do. Also, part of it was just the timeline of kind of, post summit and then the pandemic and just kind of the way everything fell. In terms of the actual summit, we not everyone was able to go. We had an application process, because we wanted to make sure that the right people were in the room, that we had organizers that represented communities from all across the country that had different varying levels of experience in the gun violence prevention movement, represented different national organizations, different local organizations. So when we kind of pushed out the summit application, it was definitely mostly virtual. However, because most of us are in school, a lot of it was also just word of mouth.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing, and I think you'd be a really great fit for this. Let me send you the application so you could check it out." So that was definitely a big part of our outreach strategy. And then additionally, because a couple of us are Reformed Jews and were heavily involved in NIFTY when we were in high school. A chunk of our people are kind of from that community,
Yeah.
just because that's where a lot of our connections were. But yeah, we really do our best to make sure we're reaching as many people as possible, whether that's on social media or even in person, just by who we know and that sort of thing.
So at your national conference, I think that's what you were calling it. Um, are you guys talking about reforms or potential bills that you want to try and introduce to your state representative, your state legislator, or is it more so community based strategies that you guys look at?
Yeah, so it was really a combination. the day before the summit, so the summit was over a weekend, it was like Friday to Sunday. So the day before, we actually had a lobby day where people had the opportunity to come in early and go lobby their representatives on the Hill prior to the beginning of the summit. So we did provide that opportunity so that people, would have a little bit of the national political scene as like part of the experience of the summit. In terms of like our coalition work, a big part of the summit was building the coalition. So, we have coalitions in different states, but all those people came from different communities within that state. So like we have a big coalition in Denver, and we had people from different schools in Denver or who grew up in Denver but go to school somewhere else, who are all able to connect at the summit and talk about the issues that they think are most important in their community, whether that be a specific piece of legislation that they're looking to pass in their state government, or some kind of community oriented approach. So it was really just about bringing people together to kind of have those conversations about what they need, what direction they want to take, and what is going on in their state, in their community, because every community is different. And we brought in speakers and leaders from all different kinds of organizations, people from all different backgrounds, to talk about all different, approaches to organizing around gun violence. We had gun violence survivors come and speak about their experience and how their personal experiences drove their passion for working on the issue. We had mental health professionals come in and speak about the mental health aspects of gun violence. We had policy directors of big national gun violence organizations come and talk about the current national policy priorities in the movement. We really tried to touch on every single issue that connected to gun violence that was involved in the movement, so people could feel like they had a very like holistic view of the issue, and while also giving people the time to connect with people in their communities to build the coalitions.
Yeah. Two questions. One is a quick just a quick shot. You said it was founded a year ago?
Just about. So
Wow.
Catherine and I staffed an event together in March.
Wow.
And
That's incredible.
that's when she told me, and then the summit happened that November.
That's incredible. Wow. You guys have grown
Yeah.
so rapidly. Um, wow. And then yeah, the other thing was like a comment question. So the comment is, um, as someone who's around your age and someone who has just like you and Catherine's her name, sorry,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and Catherine have probably been around. We've, I'm assuming like you guys, um, we've all been around both student slash youth organized organizations or events, or I don't know, even color wars, kind of like a youth organized thing, right? Versus a more adult slash adult organized thing, right? I mean, a perfect example of a youth organized thing is what's happening right now, these protests, right? It's very youth organized. And an adult organized thing is typically more structured, more hierarchical. Um, so my comment was, I find it really interesting that not my generation is so accepting, I guess, and just accepting of your guys' nature of being a youth-led organization, right? And so when I was just listening to you talk about your national summit and how you guys approach implementation of like approach getting change done, right? It seems to me like it's more so here we're providing you resources, we're providing you with the platform. Now meet each other, discuss, figure out what works best for you rather than here is what not my organization stands for. Go to your communities and implement exactly what we want you to implement because we know that that will work best. So I like how you said that like one of your largest coalitions is in Denver, right? And how
Mhm.
they might come with whoever, like they could have some kids who aren't even involved in Not My Generation come, and then they talk about solutions when they're at the summit, and the solutions could like you, I like how you said it could be like specifically could be either more legislative leaning or more community leaning, and there's not like this, it's not like black or white, it's very mid ground, and I like that. So after that lengthy comment, my question is, how, when you guys meet as a board of directors, how important is it for you guys to maintain this like dynamic um like this dynamic way that you guys function and this youth led vision that you guys have? Is that super important to you guys, or do you guys think that that's something that's only happening because you're pretty new? Sorry, that was a lot, but it just take the question how you want. Go run with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really, it's definitely all about balance, right? Because we do like our youth oriented and also, like you said, our approach to letting people really tell us what they need
Yeah,
and, how they want to tackle the issue. Those are at the core of what we stand for and why we created the organization, because we believed that there wasn't really an organization that did that, that brought people together from different communities, from different experiences,
yeah,
and let them say, this is what I think is wrong, and this is how I think we should solve it. And then we get to come back and say, okay, great, let us, help you develop talking points for when you go talk to a legislator.
yeah,
Let us, send you money so you can host a rally in your community. Our goal has always been to support our coalitions in whatever they do, in whatever way they can, what they need. And that's always kind of been the focus of
I
what
love
we
that.
do, and of making sure that, young people have the opportunity to do these things. Because a lot of times young people, might talk about something they want to do and be super passionate, but might not have the resources to actually make that happen. So
Hmm.
what we wanted to do was to be able to provide those resources so they're able to, put their plans into action.
Yeah, I really like that. Can you talk a little bit more about these? I'm on your website right now. You say engages and supports our partner organizations and coalitions in which Not My Generation is a member. So can you talk about these coalitions if you know anything about them? What's the future coalition in the Poor People's Campaign, and how does that relate to your guys' mission?
Yeah, so coalitions and partners are kind of two separate things we do. So our coalitions are local groups in different states, and different even communities within a state, cities, towns, etc. And those are kind of our people, our members. Our partners are organizations that we have brought on, either a lot for financial support. When we decided to have a summit in Washington, D.C., we had no money. We were a brand new nonprofit. We didn't have any money. And our goal was also to pay for everyone, so
Wow.
that anybody who wanted to come to the summit and could not afford a flight to pay for the hotel, any travel expense, that we would be able to pay for it. In addition, to paying for space and the hotel rooms and feeding everybody for the weekend and programmatic costs. So that was our goal, because we wanted to make sure that every community was represented, and that financial issues were not going to be a barrier. So part of the reason why we did bring so many partners on initially was because of that, because we needed financial support. But we also, wanted their input, because we had never launched a national organization before. We had never, run a summit for 150 people before. We'd never done any of this before. Some of us did, like Catherine, Zoe, who's our program director, because of our work at NIFTY, we did, understand a little bit how a large scale event functioned, and kind of like, we'd all done legislative work before and understand how to incorporate that. But like, none of us had fundraised for an event this big before. And brought in speakers and decided what issues were talked about and what issues weren't talked about. So a lot of the partners we brought in because we respected them as nonprofit organizations, as companies, and we wanted their input and their advice. A lot of them also brought speakers to the event. So like, we partner with Giffords, which is another large scale national gun violence prevention organization, and they brought in loads of speakers who were able to help us run a lot of the programs that we wanted to run. Then we partnered with some companies, like a couple local restaurants in DC, who catered a meal, and that was their contribution. The Future Coalition is kind of a unique partner, because their goal as an organization is to bring together different nonprofits run by young people who are focused on all different social issues to kind of talk and work together. So we're part of that group as kind of like a learning opportunity for us, and also just a way to connect with other organizers working on different issues. And they also did contribute to helping our summit happen as well. The Poor People's Campaign is a brand new partner. I believe we signed on with them just a couple weeks ago. And they are doing a big, now it's virtual, but March in the end of June. So we really came in because we wanted to support the work they're doing with the march, and get some of our people involved in that. And economic issues and economic inequality is something that we also believe connects deeply to the gun violence prevention movement. So we thought it really made sense for us to be working with them as well. And that, because that is a brand new partnership, we haven't really done much with them yet, but we do have some stuff that we're doing with them in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Like, I'm not sure, I don't want to I'm going to pinpoint Not My Generation's work. It's pretty amazing that Not My Generation as an organization, within such a short time of being around, has been able to not only expand nationally, but then also create ties with some of these organizations that you have. And I had never heard of the Future Coalition. Is that what it's called? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of them, but that's a pretty amazing mission statement too. Yeah, wow, that's a lot to digest. So are there any members of the board who are who are now out of college?
No, we do have a couple members who aren't in school and are working or focused on other things.
Yeah.
But all are within like the kind of 18 to 21 age group.
Yeah. So
And most of us are current students, yeah.
So for someone like you, and I'm guessing Catherine and Zoe, who are probably your age too, since you guys did Nifty together, what does next year look like, as in post graduation? Is this something that you guys are planning on sticking with full time? Is this something that you guys are, I don't know. Talk to me about that. Like what does post college look like?
Yeah, well, so I believe Catherine, I think there's only like three of us that are seniors. Some people have taken gap years or like are a year younger or whatever.
Yeah.
Catherine and I will be seniors in the fall. There might be one or two others. We have not had that discussion yet, to be completely transparent. Because a large amount of what we do is very fueled by what is going on, that day. Long-term planning is something that we sometimes do struggle with, just because, especially right now, because there's so much going on. Like last week, we had, we have a typical agenda for our board meetings. We go through, what's currently going on first, and then like each director gives an update from themselves and from their committee. We talk about the summit because we were planning on hosting another summit in November, which I can talk about more in a second. But last week at our meeting, we spent the entire time talking about what's going on right now, and we like pushed our normal, it's typically our meeting's an hour to an hour and a half, and we got to about 2 hours, and it was after 10 p.m. We were like, all right, we have to stop. We got to come back tomorrow and like continue this discussion. But so we haven't had a lot of those long-term conversations yet because of everything that's going on. But it's definitely something that, we're aware of and we'll be talking about as we move forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned November's national summit. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, so we're not really sure what we're doing, to be completely honest, because with the pandemic, everything changes every single day. We have lots of different plans. Zoe, our program director, is kind of the point person for summit planning. So I know her and Catherine are working really hard to kind of figure out what our options are. We're talking about doing a virtual summit. We're talking about pushing it, where, there's lots of different conversations in place. And that is something we are going to have to figure out rather soon, because, planning a national summit takes a few months. So
Yeah. Well, I think that if you guys don't have some coalition in the Boston Tufts area, which I'm sure you have a coalition in the Boston area?
I'm not exactly sure. A lot of our coalitions are kind of centered in either areas where we're from, we go to school, or our other people on our national team go to school. I don't actually know that we have anyone besides our Northeast regional coordinator. I think she is from New England, but besides that, most of us are not. So
we should try and get some something going at Tufts, or at least some sort of like communication going between not my generation and whatever might be applicable at Tufts. I could help
yeah,
you
for
with that.
sure.
Also, how did you know Freddie?
We did Nifty
Shout out
together
to
in high
Freddie.
school.
Shout out to Freddie. Thank you for helping us set this up. So, what were you
Yeah.
saying?
We did Nifty together in high
Okay.
school. Yeah.
He's the nicest guy. Everyone
Yeah.
loves Freddie. And unfortunately, he's graduated. All right. So, the closing question I like to ask for everyone who comes on is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's just for people like me, for listeners who I don't have like a demographic, but I think it's typically like our age, but also like a lot of um, people from like their 40s to 60s are listening. So it's not just people our age. So for people listening, what ways can I help? What ways can they help? how can we get involved in order to make your jobs easier and help. I mean, I think, just to answer my own question, I think everyone who's listening right now and this Wednesday should be very, um, if not already considering protesting and being an ally of the movement right now. That's obviously, as we talked about, one huge way you could help. But beyond that, more long term, um, more pertaining to not my generation. How can we help? What are the ways that we can help?
Yeah, sure. So definitely going to our website is great because we have lots of different opportunities on our website. There's certain, Google forms that you can fill out if you want to start a coalition in your area, if you're interested in being a part of our national leadership, things like that. So our website's a great resource for that. It's notmygenerationgvp.org. And then our social media as well. And on Facebook recently, kind of in reaction to the pandemic, we launched a new Facebook group called Not My Generation, an organizing community, which is an opportunity for organizers, people who want to get involved in organizing, who've never done anything before, people who are highly involved in the gun violence prevention movement, literally anyone, to come together in a Facebook group to share opportunities and ideas and thoughts and feelings while we can't gather together in person. So that's a great opportunity as well. And then just to follow us on social media, Instagram and Twitter are both NMG_GVP. And that's where we post all of our updates. So anytime we're having a virtual event, we're pushing a piece of legislation, we're uplifting the work of another group, that's going to be on our social media.
Okay.
And we are working on planning a second virtual phone bank. That's going to be coming up in the next week or two in reaction to everything that's going on right now. So that's a very real and current way that people can get involved. Especially we do want to make sure that, of course, we encourage that people protest, but we also recognize that because there is a pandemic, not everyone can go protest. Not everyone feels comfortable going to protest because of health concerns or things like that. So we want to make sure that we're providing lots of opportunities now for people to be involved in the work we're doing, no matter where they are or what's going on.
Yeah, to that point, anyone who's still listening at this point, do what you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Protesting, I believe there's protesting at a march, and then there's protesting in your own home even. Protesting isn't necessarily large public gatherings. It extends to when you're in with your white friends and someone's saying something that's wrong, speaking up. When you're at a family dinner and your parents seem to be miseducated, speaking up. There's many ways, just to build off Madeline's point. And then also, to my knowledge, to my understanding, on your guys' website, you have a donate button, right?
Yes.
So they can donate, which clearly is important as you guys have the goal of providing everyone with the flights and food for your national summits. So yeah, well, you guys, everyone who's been listening to this point, thank you so much. This was episode 7 with Not My Generation's Madeline Mardiks. Got it that time. And thank you so much, Madeline.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.